talked about like doing the cardio, but where I think the third factor is not actually hitting the weights and not doing a hard resistance training program, thinking that's the realms of young men or bodybuilders and just not doing it. What's your experience with people just not hitting the weights hard?
Yeah, one of my pet peeves and one of my issues is the whole notion of I don't want to lift weights because I will build too much muscle. That really gets on my nerves now, and
Okay.
it's a lot more common than I think. I don't know if that is more common than I think, but I think it is very much held true in a lot of people's mindsets that I've come across. Like I've come across it so many times now where it's very irritating and it's getting on my nerves. The fact that you think that you can build too much muscle, and me and Faz are here trying to get jacked, and when like I'm nowhere near that, like, and I'm in the gym like every week, like, yeah, is that a very ignorant approach to take with mindset in terms of lifting weights for some? Yeah, it's very irritating to me for myself to be in the gym, putting in as much work as I do, and not seeing the muscle growth that I want, and then someone else thinking that if they just lift one dumbbell, they're going to turn into the Hulk.
So
Yeah,
what do you see are the benefits of hitting the weights?
increased muscle mass, obviously. Your resting metabolic rate will be higher, which will allow you to eat more food in the long run. Um, I don't know what associations people have with cardio. Like, do they think doing that cardio will burn the fat off their body? But then I don't know if they understand that more lean tissue and more muscle mass in the right areas will actually improve their physique in
Yeah.
terms of how it looks, because it will add shape.
Mm.
That's what muscles do. They add shape to your body. A reduction in fat and no muscle is not going to add shape, or, you know, like or like, I know that we all have our individual goals and how we want to look. For most men, that's, you know, bigger up top, smaller in the waist for that V taper. For ladies, it's, you know, flip that around where it's, you know, bigger glutes, you know, around the hips. But I think, yeah, I think people think that the cardio is going to just eliminate all the fat on their body,
Mm.
and then that's going to help them get to their goals. Where if you just switch the emphasis of, you know, more weight training along with nutrition, um, and some like level of NEAT throughout the day, I think is because I've tried both. I've tried, you know, the cardio and starvation approach, and I've tried the higher NEAT along with weight training. And from my experience, I'd never go back to doing the cardio and starvation approach. So that's just from my experience. But um, I think I don't know if you've come across this with any of your clients, but I've had some experiences where, you know, they say that they don't want big arms, and I'm just like, please don't think that, because it's not as easy as you think. Like, in the beginner stage, you will make progress a lot faster, but it's not going to get to the point where you turn into the Hulk, and, you know, one day you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm huge and I don't like this. Like, it's not going to happen like that. And I
Yeah.
think people take that mindset into lifting weights where they don't want to touch a dumbbell or jump on, you know, jump in a squat rack, and it's very frustrating to come across that. And that, I don't know where that comes from either. I don't know where that mindset is developed. Whether they just see, like, you know, someone on a magazine or someone on steroids, and that's just, you know, what sticks to them. But that's just my experience with, you know, people and their approach to resistance training and weightlifting. And maybe it may be something related to the environment, like, you know, the weight room and the people in the weight room and the way they act and their behaviors, and it might not be appealing. Whereas, like, they might feel safe on a cardiovascular machine where there's no one around them, and, you know, not some huge guy in there like making noise. And I guess that might be something, but I don't know what you think about that, because it'd be
Now,
interesting to hear your thoughts.
in terms of the benefits, I think people got to remember this. I've written down a few benefits here, which I want to talk through. Firstly, muscle adds shape to your physique, adds good shape to your physique. By all intents, by all practical purposes, it adds the shape in the opposite ways that body fat does. Like you had to shape up top, makes your broad shoulders broader, makes you bigger in the right areas rather than fat, which just distorts your shape and smooths everything out. So it's the exact opposite of being fat. So it adds sexy shape to your body. Like muscle is sexy. Next thing is like having a large amount of muscle actually protects you massively from diabetic markers. And if we look at one of the biggest sort of diseases in the UK and the US, it's all related to obesogenic diabetic factors, like whether that's kidney issues, liver issues, heart issues, brain issues, all that kind of stuff. Those are all essentially can be traced back to health and obesogenic factors. So protects against diabetic markers. Also, for the long term, it actually a high degree of muscle mass protects against neurodegeneration as well. So the ability for your brain to stay on track. So there are horrible diseases like Alzheimer's and stuff like that. We know now that having a higher degree of muscle mass actually starts to prevent, or at least safeguard you from those issues. Effectively, we know that for your best chance of not only having a long life, but having a good quality of life, you're better off being as big as possible and as lean as possible. So it's very, very important. So we are not just talking about building muscle as a narcissistic endeavor. And I think that's just to briefly touch on your points. I think you've covered it really well. So I won't go into it too much, but I think that's a large part of where people get this, I don't want to do weights. They feel it's more of a narcissistic endeavor and how it's just for young men trying to show off, when the reality is the complete opposite. And just to go on to the next couple of points, I think if you do have a greater degree of muscle mass, you're able to hold a higher weight with less fat. Let me just explain what I mean by that. Now, my body used to naturally gravitate towards 90 kilos. And that was roughly where it liked to be from when I was like 15 years old. Yeah, I was big, people. So now, over the years, that 90 has been leaner and leaner and leaner and leaner because I've gained more and more and more muscle. This is a really important thing. If the concept of a body set point is true, and there's some, variability on whether people believe in that or not, but if it's true, the more muscle you have, the more you can get back up to that weight point and look better. So think about where you naturally sit. If you naturally sit at like 14 stone, 15 stone, 90 kilos, whatever, or 200 pounds, however you want to say it, right? If you naturally sit there, surely it would be better for at least just 10 pounds of that to be more muscle and 10 pounds to be less fat. It's going to look better. Just think about it from that perspective. The next thing is as well, the more muscular you are, the more fat you could hold and still look good. I'll give you an extreme example. You see guys who are like, and I've had guys come to me who are about 130 pounds, which is really light, like less than 60 kilos. And they don't have abs and they're, of average height, like as I say, they're 5'10". You're not going to have abs at that height because you're just not muscular enough. Whereas you see a competitive bodybuilder in the off season, they might be really, really bloated, really, really fat. They might be as much as 20% body fat, but they're still got their abs. The bigger you are, the more muscle you hold, the less fat you're going to look with assuming the same amount of fat. So those are all reasons, both narcissistic and non-narcissistic, health-related, longevity-related, quality of life-related, why hitting the weights is better for you than cardio. Now, if you're going to do that hour of cardio or you're going to do that hour of weights, you may as well hit the weights because you're going to burn the same amount of calories roughly. And again, bear in mind, you burn all calories with actual cardio, right? Remember, we had that talk. So you may as well hit the weights because at least then you're building for the future. Like right now, I'll be approaching my 40th. My maintenance is still 3,000 calories. Now, people think I'm lucky for that. I used to weigh 15 stone with probably like 50% body fat when I was 15 years old. I'm not lucky. I've put in over 2 decades of graft in the weight room so that my fat loss is now easier than it ever has been. Just let that sink in. Most people, when they approach their 30s and 40s, fat loss, they believe it gets harder. It shouldn't get harder. If it got harder, you effed up. I'm talking to you listening at home who sat there going, Faz has got it lucky because he's big bodybuilder, all that kind of stuff. No, I worked for this. If you're sat at home, you're like, I've had a lifetime of dieting, but now dieting's hard. You effed up. And if you had actually put some time into the gym, then you'd be in a better situation. But it's not too late to reverse that. So if you get in touch with, a decent coach like me and Sunil,